Hey there, you've wandered onto the VUC, a weekly conference produced by IP Communications and VoIP Community. We would like to thank Simwood.com. Simwood can turn you as a developer into a telco. Our hosted PBX is from onsip.com. You can get a URL that people can click to call you at onsip.com/getonsip. Speaking of SIP, we use the best PSTN and SIP conference bridge in the world, zipdx.com. Our website at vuc.me is on bluehost.com. And thanks to Voxbone for our world local rate dial-ins. All right, you heard it here first. This is the VUC number 621 for November 25th, 2016. I want to show Tim Panton because he looks so disgusted. I don't know what the problem is, but he centered himself. And I also want to show Mr. James Bodie, who doesn't have his hat on. James, hurry up.
Do now. There we go.
Okay, Mr. Andy Smith is one of our regulars. Of course, Michael is the one who rolled the post pre-roll. There he is. Hey, Michael.
Yeah. Hello.
And
the post gets stuck on the start
most.
side.
All right, quiet now.
No, we're stuck. We're stuck on that.
Emil. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, James is showing his. There we go. We're on whatever it is. Yeah. Oh, yes.
We're stuck.
Me to fade back over to the Hangout. Look at that, a meta shot. Isn't that beautiful?
There we go.
Hey, the lag is pretty good today. Anyway, Emil, guest of honor.
Hello.
Nice audio, too. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing wonderful. It's the second Saturday out of 3 in a row. So there's the third Saturday tomorrow. I love to be in a succession of Saturdays. I'm being very philosophical right now. But I'm doing great. How can you be doing during the vacation? Thank you for having me, guys. Really happy to be here. It's been a while.
This is a reunion, and I'm glad we have a full house here, basically. Emil, we're going to talk about what's happened in the last couple of years, because it's been quite a story. And we can also cover various little digressions that I'm sure will come up, including one that I heard about regarding IoT and security. We can talk about, this week there must have been something, A, that Chrome broke, and B, that some kind of huge major security breach. So there's always things to talk about. Yep. But let's talk about the progression of, what is it called? Jitsi. Yes, it used to be SIP. All right, enough clowning around. It used to be, it was SIP Communicator. You know what? How did SIP Communicator start, actually? I don't know.
Yeah, SIP Communicator started in 2003, January. I was a lonely student in France. Didn't have any friends. Actually, that's sort of true because I had arrived in France as an Erasmus student. All of my friends were Erasmus students. At the end of the Erasmus year, I liked it so much I decided to stay. The thing is that all the other Erasmus students left. And I was just lonely. I still loved the city, but not much to do until you make new friends. So this is when SIP Communicator was born in my room. It was very funny because it took it took me back then, it was just me, 2 weeks to get something that was doing audio, video, had a user interface, and was even able to interoperate with Microsoft MSN. And then I guess it took us another 12 years, or actually, no, 13 years to progress it, and we still couldn't call it finished. So it started then I went into the university, and it became sort of an official project that we used for a little bit of research here and there. IPv6 was the shit back then. And so we were doing a bunch of experimentation. Can this run over IPv6? Can we improve our certain things like mobility? And we were using it as an experimental thing. And then, please stop me when you're tired of this story. But when as I went through my PhD and I really liked working on this thing, so with a few friends, we were a team already at that point. We decided let's actually try to earn our living out of it. We created a consultancy company around it. We started adding support for more things into it, and SIP communicator became a delimiting name, so we went for a different one, which is how Jitsi was born.
Why Jitsi, by the way? I don't even know the answer to this question, believe it or
Well,
not.
I think I know. It's partly Bulgarian, isn't it?
It is a 100% Bulgarian word.
And it means wires, doesn't it?
It means wires. That's correct, James. Your
Yeah,
Bulgarian
so you got
is
there
great.
first before wire got in there with their wire thing.
That's actually true. Yeah. So back then, back when we renamed it, it was just when Ubuntu was becoming popular, and we thought this is such a great idea to use a native name for the name of a project, and it just sounds well. And so we thought, can we come up with something in Bulgarian? And Jitsi came. Jitsi sounded nice, short, mostly free domain names. So we went for that, and we haven't had a reason to change it again, which is good because changing a name is a hard thing.
You know, speaking of languages, Emil, your French is very good. Obviously, you speak a decent Bulgarian too. Your English is excellent. Do you speak a fourth language?
I'm sorry, no, that's all. I do understand.
Thank you very much. This is the end of the VUC, as we are disqualifying you. It's interesting to find people who speak several languages. I've been in this country for 30 years, and I'm getting by fine, not a problem.
Oh, come on, your French is great.
But I mean, I know what it's like. Whereas there are British components here. Well, wait a minute. Tim speaks Dutch like a native, right?
Double Dutch.
Double Dutch. So yeah, I was going to say something mean about the Brits, but they are eventually do master languages if they have to live someplace.
I can speak perfect gibberish. It's perfectly all right.
And you speak Irish, English,
and Australian.
And Australian, yeah.
And I was taught you two phrases.
Canadian American and English.
Okay, that's
anyway. And we're keeping this somewhat personal because we've all known each other for many years, Emil. So I wanted to ask you about the team. When you first started, you had how many people did you have when you mentioned that you've got other people working with you?
We're 3 actually.
Okay, and who were those people?
So Jana was the second developer to join. And
Who
then
is Jana, of which I'm hearing.
I have a bunch of screenshots that I'll be showing at some point today with Jana, but she's been responsible, like most of us, for many parts in Jitsi. But her preference is mostly things related to design and user interface. And she's also my partner in life. So there we go.
And she is wonderful.
She's wonderful, and we
wonderful.
all have had the pleasure of meeting her. So,
and then the third person was Damien, who's not my partner in life, but a very good friend, just the same, and who's moved to the US with us. And then Lubo was the fourth to join, and then the team grew slowly from there. We are truly an amazing team. I love every member of our team. The knowledge that has been accumulated, the experience that everyone has is just, I'm so lucky to be part of this team. This is an amazing team. Do I remind you of someone except that I'm sincere?
Yeah, you sound a little like Steve. You sound a little like Steve Ballmer, but let's move on.
Steve Jobs.
It's very difficult to talk to people who you know very well, but I wanted to ask you also about, so these were the days in Strasbourg in France we're talking?
Yes. Strasbourg is a great place. As you know, I think you've been there.
Actually, I've never been there.
Really?
I've lived in this country over 30 years. I've never been to Strasbourg.
Well, I've been to Bordeaux, and it's slightly different. It's a smaller place. It's very cozy. Bordeaux is a beautiful big city with a French spirit, but Strasbourg is a small sort of feels like an Alpine, Swiss, German, French village with beautiful houses, lots of flowers. So it's a great place, and the universities there is pretty good too. And we stayed there for 12 years, 13, and then Atlassian popped up actually on the day that my son was born, and asked, "Well, how would you guys feel about working together?" And that's how we ended up in Austin, in the US. And we're very happy in Austin. Austin is a very cool place. Really like it. Being able to walk around in a t-shirt during the winter beats many other things. So really good to be here.
I had a
Where do
question,
we
but
take this from now?
I was curious whether, because I'm looking at the gauges here, and it doesn't look necessarily like everybody's audio, including yours, Emil, is on Periscope. Can somebody confirm that for me? Because this is a pretty complex setup.
I'll turn it up a bit.
James, turn your audio up and see if.
Hang on, I'll just mute.
And while we're waiting, yes, I have not been to Strasbourg, but it was an interesting thing, and I that you were based there when I first met you, and we first started talking. It's actually kind of complicated to get there from here, but moving on from that.
That's true.
Point.
That's true.
Yeah, we would have had to take a plane or something. Moving on from that, I think would be interesting if you're willing to talk about the path to acquisition. Is that something that we could talk a little about?
Sure.
I mean, I think it's something that a lot of people would be interested
Randy,
in.
it's doing the same thing it was doing before. We're only hearing your audio on the Periscope, not anybody else's.
Well, that's extremely boring, and I'm sorry. Let's see what we can do about that. Although, wow. Oh, that could be because, let me think about this a minute. I have a local recording going. Well, that's horrible. I'm sorry. Let me look at this. Let me stop the recording if I can find it. No, the recording never started, so that can't be it. All right, let me get rid of that and see if it makes a difference. But that was not. We would be going to this. Yeah, should be coming in.
Well, it looks like it's not working.
Oh, you know what? I do know why. See, this is an example. Andy's asking me why it took so long to prepare. Because there's 50,000 things to do. And it's going to come in just a second because there it is. Now we have full audio. I know. I can see.
Test 1 2 3.
Yeah. Well. See, this is
yeah, that's working. I can hear myself.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's great. So everybody can now hear Emil. So Emil, take it away.
Start again. Yeah, I don't know. I'm really sorry about that. Periscope
That's
is an extra. It's not our main thing. You can watch us on YouTube, vuc.me. But it's embarrassing that my voice went on and on and on, and you didn't hear Emil. Sorry about that.
That's not so bad, Randy. You have a great voice. So
Thank you.
It could have been worse. Yeah, the acquisition. It was really an interesting thing to happen. So for many years, we were always technology driven. We started our company with the idea that we wanted to improve a certain technology. It wasn't your typical startup. A good, well-structured startup would start by solving a problem that has been confirmed as a problem that sufficiently many people experience, so that you know that you could at some point get paid for your work. That wasn't our approach, and that's not original. Many people start down that path by just the passion for a technology, and many of them just get their wings broken at some point. We were lucky that way, but it wasn't easy. For many years, we were providing consultancy services around the Jitsi project. It was a very exhausting game to play because we had to make sure that enough people had adopted Jitsi, that enough people wanted to. We had to make sure that we had enough features that it satisfied enough use cases so that people like telcos or vendors of PBXs would want to use Jitsi, but improve it slightly more in certain direction, and they would pay us to do it. So it's an endless chasing game where you try to find new customers, you try to implement new stuff for them, and you never have a lot of visibility. So it was extremely difficult in terms of we didn't know what the future was going to be made of. We had a visibility of a few months, and that adds a lot of stress. I'm sure that anyone who's ever started a company would know what I'm talking about. The other thing that we were really lacking into, and I'm realizing that now that I'm looking more closely into the startup ecosystem here in the US, we lacked any sort of exposure toward potential exit strategies. You know, we were hoping that things would become easier one day, but we weren't sure how we were going to get there. People, when people make a startup here in the US or elsewhere, they would have an investor or someone who would try to promote them elsewhere so that it would eventually get acquired by some company and be integrated in their technology stack, and life would become easier. We didn't have any such thing, so we weren't easily discoverable. And there were a number of acquisitions around video communication that happened before we were approached. And we got lucky because Atlassian actually hired a very experienced RTC expert to solve their video communications problem. So for a long time, Atlassian was using a video technology called AdLive that then got acquired by Snapchat. So they thought, we need to have our own. We don't want to be exposed to that problem again. So we need to find a decent video company to buy. And if you look out there, many other similar companies just went and looked through the valley and bought the first team they found. So going all the way to France in Strasbourg, which is really not your typical place for, or at least it's not perceived as your typical place for finding technology companies, although there are many. That wasn't an obvious thing. And yet that person, his name is Soufiane Houri, he contacted me at the day my son was born and asked to chat and asked us about our technology, about where we wanted to go, what our aspirations were, and that's where it grew from. So it was a very lucky thing for both Atlassian and for us, because I also think that we were a rare gem in terms of the. I'm not bragging or anything. I'm trying to be objective here. I do think that we were rare to find company with that much expertise. And Atlassian was a great buyer. So I really think it was a great match, and it takes a lot of work to have such a good acquisition. Yeah, I hope that's not coming out as immodest or.
Well, for those of us who know you, obviously it's not. You're just describing the process, and I thought that process would be really interesting to people. Look, we've all heard of the Silicon Valley and the supposed meritocracy and all the bullshit of serial entrepreneurs and blah, blah, blah. You know, we have serial entrepreneurs among us who, thank God, don't use that term to describe themselves. There's just a whole vibe. I mean, you guys did the work. You were doing what had to be done. So there's absolutely no shame in describing the process as far as I'm concerned. And I think most of us who know you, Emil, know a little more about how this all went down. And so, you know, we congratulate you. And I think it's fantastic that it happened that way.
Thank you.
And I don't think that a lot of time, if you think about the word acquisition, by the way, I mean, that can go either way. An acquisition can be some big company buying you and then just putting a freeze on it, putting the brakes on and not caring about what anybody's doing. Forget about the problems of contracts or employees or money, just beyond that. Sometimes acquisitions are made just to shut people up. Yeah. So fortunately, that was far from being the case.
It was actually even beyond that. So obviously it took a little bit of fitting for us to find exactly the right way of functioning within Atlassian. What was impressive was how willing really the executives in Atlassian were to do the work to find the right place for us. Because, you know, we start with as a team here, then you were moved as a team there, and it was a continuous process. How do you guys feel now? Is it better? What do you think could be better? And we would continually adjust and adjust and adjust. So that was pretty impressive. I think we were lucky for that part. But also another thing that was pretty impressive for Atlassian was that this was a company that, for various reasons, didn't have a major presence in the open source world. This wasn't part of their DNA up until recently, and it was something that was perceived as a lack, as a regret. So they decided, let's just keep everything open source. That's not the main reason why we wanted the technology, but really we feel it's we'd be giving back to the community. We at Atlassian use open source, so this is our chance to give back, and also this is our chance to learn how to do open source. And this is becoming, open source is now no longer something original and this hippie thing. It's all about ecosystems and fostering collaborations with partners in the industry. So Atlassian fully realized that and decided to continue the development of Jitsi as open source. So everything, a year and a half worth of development on actual decent US salaries has been fully paid for by Atlassian, and all of our work on Jitsi continues to be open source.
So the minimum wage from $9 an hour to 15 made a huge difference, I suppose. I'm joking, obviously, to make a transition. Dave Todd is with us. Speaking of open source, and I wanted to mention something that I think is probably really important, which is the security problem in general, and the fact that something that you can examine source. Let me back up for a second. I was on I wrote some, I'm a terrible programmer, by the way, but I wrote some code years and years ago. And when I brought a guy on who knew how to program, he looked all this stuff over and he goes, well, there's one thing that worries me about this is that in the shopping cart session, all you'd have to do is blah, blah, blah. And he showed me how you could totally hijack the session of, and change everything because we weren't doing encryption or we weren't doing anything in those days. It was so amazing that you could have a shopping cart in any language. So long story short, he figured that out just by looking at the code. And of course, the whole point of open source is, the point on security is, first of all, you can look at stuff that you're dealing with and see that there's going to be a problem that you're going to have, or you can, people outside your team can look at this and somebody might go, well, wait a minute, there's an exploit possible here, right? So let me get Dave in and see if he has any comments so far, because he did ask to be in the session.
Well, you sucked me. Can you hear me today?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Well, I do watch the show. Sometimes I want to participate. And what you were saying about the acquisition really grabbed me, and I decided I'd jump in. I did have one of the security issue is a rat hole. I wanted to actually comment and question on what he was saying about the acquisition. One of my fears when an open source company gets acquired is that usually they try different business models, and one of them is that, oh, we'll give away all this stuff and then sell something on top of it. And I don't understand how, I'm sorry, I forget the name of the company. How are they making money out of this acquisition? Is it the because effect, what Doc Searles calls it, the because effect? Or what's their ongoing motivation? Where do you see it happening in 2 years?
So the name of the company is Atlassian. Okay. For those of you who are not immediately placing the name, this is a company that makes Jira and Confluence and Bitbucket and HipChat. And this is where video comes in. HipChat is essentially an enterprise chat tool similar to Skype for Business or to Slack. And video is just a component of it. So really, this was our first goal, to become the provider of a video technology for HipChat. And this is how we provide value to Atlassian by allowing HipChat users to have video conversations, multi-party group video calls. And I hold it that we currently, from all the main chat tools out there, I hold it that our video conferencing ability is the best. So really the open source part is not directly making money. It is, however, providing, we were looking at it recently, let me put it that way. And it turns out that a third of our PRs actually come from open source. And there's other names out there like Join Me or High Five or Comcast that build their infrastructures on the same open source projects. And there's a number of features and bug fixes that have come from these places. So this is really a collaboration, shaping up as a good collaboration effort. So yeah, I'm not sure if that answer is satisfactory, but
you can point to the cost reduction in engineering by producing a better product and getting your fixes from your users, having a higher technical level of user to do that. But I've always been afraid that, at some point, someone in marketing, I use using Ham, the marketing monkey, will say, aha, we need to withhold this new feature because it will make more money if we do that. And
that is absolutely something that can happen anywhere for any open source project. And yet you have a growing number of companies that foster open source development and where this is not happening. So I think the key is to have enough people within the company that understand the merits of open source and that can always bring them out when such a suggestion comes in, and that can say, well, we know you think that if we keep this piece, we're going to get some sort of a competitive advantage that's going to give us what, like a 1 or 2 months headway over someone. Look at all these other things that we will be missing if we do that.
I love that this company perhaps agrees with the idea you can move faster if you operate this way, if you innovate. That's one of the lessons from Eric Raymond's books that was seemingly lost in the last few years, where if you stay open and move fast, you'll be able to out-innovate your competitors.
There was this other book, maybe it's the same that you're talking to, but I remember the title. It stuck with me through the years. And the title of that book was called Innovation Happens Elsewhere. And it started with, if you take the biggest innovating companies today, whether it's Google or AT&T or Facebook or Tesla, and you take the number of smart people that you have in these companies, there's always orders of magnitude more smart individuals working and innovating elsewhere in other companies. So there's always going to be more innovation happening outside of your company, and open source is a way for you to tap into that resource. I'm generally not a fan of defending open source through these arguments, though, because they are way too abstract, and I think abstract thinking has been an enemy of open source for a while. It's what made it look like a religion that's not justified by reason. And really, there's significantly more day-to-day advantages of open source, and the fact that you can think about this one, for example, hiring. You don't have to go and when you want to hire someone, you don't have to go and try to extrapolate and say, oh, he was good at that project, so maybe this means that he'll be good when he works at our project, or she. You can just give her a task and say, why don't you go and code this in our thing and see how you do, and then we'll decide whether we want to hire you or not. And this is a significant hiring advantage because it saves you months of time in case you made the wrong hire. Or you obviously have already made the claim about people contributing code or fixing errors. A bunch of errors, like for example, H.264 is a video codec that we don't extensively use yet, but some of our other adopters, like High Five, exclusively use H.264. And now, as we need to move to H.264 because of mobile support, there's a bunch of rough edges that have been smoothed by High Five because they needed it before us, and now we're getting that work for free. And I really prefer these concrete arguments of here's how your day-to-day is going to be easier with open source. And then the last thing I'd like to comment on, yes, there's a number of open source based companies that basically just want to provide part of it open source and then withholding some extensions in order to make money. And in the open source community in general, this is a model that has been viewed with some disapproval, I guess. I would not be so quick to cast judgment, first of all, because having been through that path, I know it is extremely hard to find the right business model to sustain an open source project. It is very, very, very hard. So before going and saying, you know what, this is the wrong business model for you, people should often think that it is either that or nothing. It is either that all of these people have to leave working on that project and go find paying jobs. So sure, you can always argue, you know what, you would probably be able to make more money or be more secure in your employment and salaries if you would handle things differently. But at the end of the day, those who do the work are the ones that know best what they can and cannot achieve. So I would never be quick to cast judgment over open source business models. And really, there are a few obviously where you can say. So I've seen just want to add this caveat at the end. I've seen projects that say, you know what, we'll keep the open source version 6 months behind, and we'll have a private version that is where we make our money. And obviously that already goes off the chart, and this is not sustainable. This just adds so much complexity for management. Like, how are you even handling forks and contributions to your open source then that you want to up port to your private version? This is just not manageable. So yes, there are singularly bad decisions around open source, but most of the time I try to be understanding and say, well, if you think you can make it work that way, sure, go and give it a try. Why not?
I have a little thing I want to interject here about open source, which is that I used to have discussions with a couple of people who thought open source was, like worshiping at the altar. They would not have it. They didn't want anything to do with any paid programs. And I'm curious to ask you, you and Dave, actually, what you think of this, because personally, I'm an omnivore. So I eat some meat, but not much, and I eat fish, and I eat everything. And if I find a program that's closed source that does what I want it to do, I will. If it's by donation, I'll donate it. If not, I'll buy it. But I don't care whether it's open source or not, because I am not everybody is capable of looking at the code or even caring about the code. I'm just going to assume that you need enough trust when you look at something and put it on your system. You need to trust it enough so that it's not going to take things over and hijack everything. But beyond that, as far as looking at the source code and all that, I mean, that is not my thing. So I'm perfectly willing to pay a reasonable price for code. And I think it's really crazy to adopt a religion, just like crazy, wrong word, because I was about to say, I think it's a little weird to limit yourself to, say, a vegan diet, unless you have a specific reason for doing that, which if you do, that's fine. But I don't want to do that. I like to eat all kinds of things, and I like to have the software that works, that does what I want it to do. If I want to do video editing, well, bad example, because there are actually a couple of good, I think they're open source video editors. But other than that, there are a lot of things you want to do that you do not have open source to do. Now, interestingly, and I'll shut up in a second, interestingly, a lot of the WebRTC stuff, everything that's JavaScript is obviously pretty much open source because you've got the scripts loading. So when you're on the web looking at those things, that code is pretty much naked, is it not? I think that's pretty much the case. I mean, there's very few cases where you're doing something on the web where nobody can see what you're doing. Anyway, about the paying for software, let me call on Dave, and then you, Emil, and anybody else who wants to chime in. Dave, I had to mute you because you're typing. You're such a fast typist that you're really loud. And James is making funny signs. Dave, would you pay for closed source code programs, apps? Oops, Dave is now frozen, so I'll go to Emil right away.
Am I here?
No, there
we can hear you.
Yes, go ahead, Dave.
Okay, so you just changed the narrative on me. Yes, I can and do and have paid for closed source software, but that the core phrase, the core thing that needed to be in the discussion was quality. And I'm willing to pay for quality. I may be different than other people because we have this, for a while there, I don't know if this is really true as much anymore. People used to say, open source, it's higher quality. Well, we've been kind of proving that it's suffering in terms of quality. So I will pay, for example, I used to work on an ardor.org. It's a DAO. It's very cool. And the author makes under $100,000 a year, I think, through donations and by putting a small barrier in front of the compiled binaries. He makes the source available. But my God, the complexity of that particular product is just mind-boggling. The size of the team is really qualified and small. And he's still, not making much of a living for the work. So it would be nice for the rewards from producing any form of software to be commensurate with the effort. Anyway, but I just wanted to hand it back to Emil here.
I'm totally agree with you on quality. I mean, I thought that was kind of implied. I'm not going to pay for a program. I don't do accounting that needs a certain thing, and it's the only thing that anybody makes. If I need a video, if I need artistic stuff or whatever it is, it has to be good. Yeah. But once it's good, I'm happy to pay for it. I don't care whether the source is available or not. But there's a certain amount of trust you need to put in the people. Look, I'm using a program called CamTwist right now. CamTwist is Mac only, but it's an absolutely brilliant program. It does more than the $450 program that I paid for from Telestream. And Michael knows about these people and what they do, and they have these horribly incredible, expensive programs. They're not open source either. So between two closed sources, the one that goes to work for me and doesn't cost anything is, great. And I've talked to the author, and I have donated. So I'm willing to donate. If the commercial version costs $450 and I give the guy $100, I feel pretty good because most people are putting in 10 or 0. Anyway, back to Emil on the question of paying for closed source, or even just downloading closed source shareware.
Right. So I think there are certain cases where some amount of religiousness about open source doesn't hurt. For example, I'd say young computer science students who have to learn about tinkering anyway, I find it healthy for them to impose restrictions on themselves and say, you know what, I'm not going to use anything that's closed source. And that's good for two reasons. First of all, because they learn a lot by just making sure that they solve the day-to-day problems that they hit with open source applications. Some percentage of them would actually end up contributing there. And and everyone would benefit from these things going forward. And the second, they actually have the time at that point as well. It's not like they're taken in professional activities where really sleep and your life are the limit of how much you could work, I guess. So there's a point where you can just not afford to tinker that much with things anymore. So yeah, if you're a young developer or computer science student, I find it healthy that you would impose such self-discipline on yourself. I still think it's important not to take this over the top and start hating everyone who doesn't. You still have to understand that this is your personal choice, that you're doing it for self-improvement reasons. But the world is not a worse place because not everyone is going down the same path. Another case where I think it makes sense to be disciplined about only using open source is potentially, and I would like this to be very nuanced because it really depends on the case, but government-related purchases of software, I think it makes a lot of sense to, if not require it, at least prioritize use of open source, because that gives you the diversity of service providers. You can buy a Linux installation to equip some new ministry. And yes, you still have to pay people to maintain it for you, but at least you know that tomorrow you cannot be taken hostage by these people, and you can go in and use a different company to continue the maintenance if that company either goes bankrupt or decides to just double or triple their prices. And you don't have that choice with some of the proprietary software, especially if it's specialized. It's happened many, many times that people would come and say, you know what, that thing that we've been charging you so far, well, now we're going to triple it because we know you have no choice and you're not going to go with anyone else because of how much you've invested so far with us. Other than that, I don't have absolutely any problem with closed source software. It's everyone's job. They get to make it available as they wish, and it's a complicated world. So I definitely think there's a place for all of this under the sun.
Well, I'm going to call on James in a second. Well, actually, maybe I'll ask Dave to read ask his question. But before that, I just wanted to distinguish between people who can actually look at. I mean, I know what code is. I've programmed badly in 10, 15, 20 languages probably. But the point is, I'm not going to look at somebody's code. I'm never going to look at code from just because something is open source. I always get the executable. I am not going to do that. So what I'm saying simply when I say religion is that the person I was talking to doesn't code. He may know a language like me, but he's not going to look at the source. So if you're not looking at the source, then it's more of a political or religious decision. And I think that that's probably not a good way to go. Of course, there's exceptions to that too. Anyway, I think James may have something to say, but if he doesn't,
I do.
you did have a question. Go ahead, James, and then back to Dave.
Have you ever known me not to have something to say?
No, that's a good.
Anyway, the point that I made in the Matrix chat is that the reason that this is our little team, tend to use exclusively open source software is that we've got this horrible habit of wanting to do things that nobody's ever done before, and that causes all kinds of problems because you can't just go out and get the software. You actually have to change things, and the only way, or the easiest way of doing that is to use open source, and you tend to find that people will talk to you, whereas with a closed source piece of software, you try and find the person who wrote the original code. It's almost impossible.
100% true. 100% true. And all of the people that we know in common, James, Digium, Free Switch, all of those people have open source versions, if not all open source, and all of them are reachable, as you just said. Good.
Yeah, and they tend to be super people as well, like Emil and Daniel and Anthony with his Free Switch bits and pieces. Absolutely brilliant people.
It's a really good point. Dave is going to come in a second, but that's a good point, that we're all on the internet, and it's so much easier to talk to people when you have their email address and a contact or a group or whatever. Dave?
The first thing that most companies do is completely obscure their developers from the users. They're not. There was a time in the gaming industry where we had rock star programmers. And we have that in the open source world where you can actually email Linus and he might respond, maybe, So I like very much that the programmers are still connected to their user base. There was a guy I really liked, developed the U2 and the Blackbird spy plane. I can't remember his name right now. Kelly Johnson. The guy could see air. And he published his 15 rules for doing quality engineering. And one of those rules was that the engineers had to be on the shop floor in order to see what the production problems were. And that's one of the first things it does get obscured in most closed source software. Anyway, the question that I had, going back to an earlier question, was merely, how often can and do you hire from your independent contributor base inside of Jitsi?
All of our team members, except for one, we're currently 12. All of them, except for one, came from our contributor base.
Right. So you pointed out earlier just how hard it is to bring a new person up. And that happens almost everywhere. You hire a new engineer and you basically expect them to sit in a corner for 2 to 6 months before they produce one line of usable anything. And I think that getting that level of experience is cool. Anyway, that was it. Go back to whatever you wanted to go back to security, Randy.
Well, that was one of the things that was James.
James.
Yeah, well, I'm really keen to find out more about what you've been up to with Jitsi. I know we're dragging you from the higher level bits and pieces down to the nitty gritty, but I'm really interested in the nuts and bolts of Jitsi.
Yeah.
And I've been looking forward to seeing Jitsi 3.0, and I know it's not quite there yet, even though it's supposed to be out, 2013?
And I wanted to ding you guys about fixing your congestion control, but go ahead.
So, yeah, a few clarifications. Jitsi grew to be significantly more than a single application. So, when people now talk about fixing Jitsi, and I'm honestly confused because I'm not sure which of those applications they actually mean. So let's just start with clarifying that a little bit. Currently, the Jitsi client, Jitsi desktop, which is our original application, which is where everything started, is on honorable maintenance course, where we're not adding any new features to it. I'd say that all of the code that we currently use for our other applications like Jitsi Video Bridge came from Jitsi. It was stuff that was extracted from the Jitsi code base, but the Jitsi client itself really is not something that we can afford to maintain anymore. And there's a few other people outside of the team that still try to add things here and there. But really, it just does what it used to. It can talk to XMPP and SIP. People use it to make calls that way, and that's where it is. WebRTC is something that happened recently. Well, not so recently anymore, 5 years ago, and that changed the industry in a number of ways, which I think are all good for the end user. And this is where most of our effort is today. That includes Jitsi Video Bridge, Jitsi Meet, the Jitsi broadcasting infrastructure, Jibri, which allows us to live stream to YouTube. We're working on possibility to transcribe your conferences, record them, connect them to the PSTN and a bunch of others. So this is Jitsi, the Jitsi Meet and Jitsi Video Bridge ecosystem. This is where we work most on today. And actually, I'm glad that you, Dave, mentioned congestion control, because this is potentially one of the biggest places where we work on. We are right now completely revamping all of our what we call this transformer chain, but it wouldn't mean much to people outside of the project. But it's basically all the bits that evaluate available bandwidth, that try to adapt to your available bandwidth by reducing the number of people that you're receiving, reducing the frame rates for these people, potentially even turning off video. All of that is being currently reworked. Sorry, Tim, what were you going to say?
I think he just hit a burst of when he came in.
Okay.
He necessarily wanted to say anything.
Oh, okay. So let's talk a little bit about that. There are a few mostly more noticeable changes that we're making around Jitsi Meet. One that we started recently, I'm going to start. This has been mostly internal, but everyone outside of the company can also use. How do I share? I'm always confused by Hangouts. Oh, there you go.
Button left hand side.
That was obvious as Jitsi Video Bridge.
No, yeah, and yes. So this is George joining from a mobile on our daily stand-up. So mobile is something that we spend a lot of time working on. So can I just ask, that's on an Android handset, is it? No, that's on an iPhone handset.
Okay.
So no, it's not just fire up Jitsi Meet in a Chrome browser solution. It really is a new application, and I can talk a little bit more about that later. So the last two pictures that you see in the top right and top and bottom left corners here are pictures from Atlassian Global All Hands, which is something that we started supporting within Atlassian recently. And this has been really great. So basically, every week we're able to reach more than 2,000 Atlassians by using Jitsi Meet, and some of them come real time. Some of them are just joining, just looking at the recordings. But by the words of the founders, this has helped them a lot in their perception of their own company, because every week they can say, we cycle through the offices and we see the Manila office and the San Francisco office and the Australian Sydney office, and they can basically see their entire team real time, which helps everyone. Like every person in every office gets a better mental picture of how many and how different people there are in the company, which I find very valuable from a human perspective. This was a very interesting project. It's not something that I believe many people have set up outside of Atlassian, although they could. But it took some adding some features like the whole broadcasting thing. Jibri, by the way, which stands for Jitsi Infrastructure for Broadcasting, Jitsi Broadcasting Infrastructure, is not a Bulgarian word, which is the barrel where you create alcohol. Just fun fact. We have so that was one of the interesting things. And by the way, thank you, Michael, because one of those things, one of the things that we use today are the Majewell cards that we use in order to plug into Atlassian's video infrastructure. You recommended that to me, so I really, really appreciate your advice. Michael is always my first choice as an expert of audio, video equipment. I mean, I have questions, and he's always able to provide great advice. So, really appreciate that, Michael. So, another interesting thing that we recently did, again, available for everyone to use, is this project that we now call GGBG, which is Jitsi to Jitsi Bridging Gateway. It's also not a pun with Bulgarian, but I'm not going to explain this one. It's very hard. And that is basically a terminator that lets you do geographically localized conferences so that every participant connects to a gateway that is in a data center geographically close to them, rather than going through the ocean on client to server connections, which gives you a worse experience. So going back to the, let me just go on the right. This is a little bit that I had on Cranky Geek, but we started looking into React Native for all of our mobile support, and I'm now going to be able to show you what the mobile version actually looks like, not just the other end of it. There it is. So these are all pictures made on an iPhone. We did this with React Native, so we're slowly transitioning we've already transitioned all of our signaling stack, and it's now fully shared between desktop and mobile. And we're
sorry, what's this called? The iPhone app.
It's Jitsi Meet. We're currently working on publishing it on the Apple Store. It's not there yet, though.
I look forward to using that. That looks absolutely stunning.
It is pretty good. We're able to join our stand-ups every day with 12 people, and it's pretty solid. Here's another view of this. And again, React Native allowed us to do that without having to split our efforts into three, because traditionally when you were looking at porting WebRTC projects to iOS or Android, you would just go and write a lot of native code for all of these operating systems. With React Native, you don't have to do that. So Bernard Boba from Microsoft, who's someone who I very much respect, was telling me this story about Next Computer. Before they folded into Apple back in the day, they actually had, for that sort of company, a relatively small, constrained development team. And what he tells me is that they were this worked a lot to their advantage, because when you have a small development team, you are constrained. You cannot just go for the most obvious thing all the time because you don't have the resources. You can't afford it, and that sort of forces you to be creative and think for other cheaper options in terms of investment. It also forces you to think about your priorities and what is important and what isn't. That reminds me, not that I want to compare us to poets and novelists, but there was this French author who once who has a thing for writing books with an important constraint, and one of his books was a book that he wrote without ever using the letter E, which is the most often used letter and vowel in the French language. And he said how this constraint really forces him to be creative and express things that he wouldn't have been able to without having that constraint. So again, I don't want to put us in the same level as artists, but I certainly, having to go through the pain of not having the luxury of all the people you need, actually turns out to be beneficial in a number of cases. Because right now we have a technology and we have a technology stack that we're just able to replicate across the three operating systems that we target: Android, iOS, and desktop. Actually, well, that's more than one operating system, but really it's just a browser, so it doesn't count that way. So web, Android, and iOS are three operating systems that the traditional approach would have meant we have to address separately, and not being able to do that forced us to find an alternative approach. So mobile is one of those things that currently take really a big chunk of our attention. And yeah, that's that I guess should do as an update from Jitsi. I hope it was useful. There's obviously much more to say, but I don't want to.
No, that's absolutely what I wanted to hear, actually. I look forward to getting to grips with your iOS and Android clients when they.
And James, you would be the first person I ping when it becomes available. It actually, we're in the process of resubmitting it. It got turned off from the Apple Store. It's really frustrating when you get comments like, "There's no way to unpost offensive content," and when we don't even support the notion of posting content. So it's sometimes frustrating to deal with such big machines as the Apple Store, but I'm confident we'll get it through. So
I'm sure you will. Where there's a will, there's a way. In fact, you just deploy Jana on that, because she's probably a little bit better at dealing with people like that than you are.
Yeah, except that submitting an application isn't exactly dealing with people, but
No.
Are the client Whitebook is asking if the clients are in GitHub?
yes, all of that is open source. Actually, it is the same client. It is the same project that we use for Android and desktop and iOS.
What's the project name in
Jitsi-meet. So that's github.com/jitsi/jitsi-meet.
Got it.
I have an obtuse question. How do you use that video wedge that we talked about some time back?
Oh, that's a great question. So, and that was another great recommendation from Michael. So when you do a global all hands sort of meeting, you have two video sources most often, and that's from basically imagine a bunch of town hall style rooms all across the world, and every one of those has a speaker and a set of slides to show. The traditional approach that Meet and Hangout support this is that when you share your slides, you replace your video, but that was inconvenient for us for two reasons. The first one is that, well, people sometimes want to be able to see both the speaker and the slides. And the second one is that WebRTC screen sharing is really optimized for more static content, like slides specifically. And a lot of the Atlassian speakers actually use video, whether it's conversations with users or some other videos to illustrate their points. So that wasn't going through very well through WebRTC. Not to mention that audio isn't really shared there at all, or at least it wasn't supported until recently. Originally the way we started dealing with that is just we would have the slides as one participant that was going through the live wedge, so it actually felt to WebRTC as a webcam, so it would fully share the screen with the same frame rate as you would with a webcam, and that obviously consumes a lot of bandwidth, but it's a special use case, so you can afford that. But then that meant that someone centrally had to constantly switch between the two, and they're far apart. So this wasn't working out very well. So this is where we used the live wedge. Basically, let me put it that way. You have the video feed for the speaker, you have the video feed for the audience, and then you have the video feed for the slides. So that's actually 3 video feeds. All of these go into the live wedge, which allows you to either select between them and send that one to the conference, so they either see one of those 3 cameras, or it lets you do some sort of effects, for example, picture-in-picture. So you could take the slides and then add picture-in-picture for the audience as they're uploading, or for the speaker as they're pointing or showing something, and then you send that as the WebRTC feed to Jitsi Meet, which feeds it into the conference. So that's how we use it. We use it as a hardware mixer, basically.
Yeah, just so I'm actually showing it on my screen here. Oh, hang on, I left it. This is an interesting product, and it's basically a 4-input HDMI capture device that has a sort of it's an appliance, a built-in little video production switcher thing that's controllable via software. And I see the price has fallen on it too. It's really interesting.
It used to be $1,000. How much is it now?
I think it's $599 right now.
Oh, wow.
I saw price.
Oh, I want one of those.
That's interesting because I found it worth the price even for $1,000. Because let's put things in perspective. Generally, when you're trying to hook into big teleconference rooms, you're dealing with,
it is still $1,000.
Okay, you're dealing with very, very expensive equipment that goes to $30,000 a piece or more, so and every time you want to change something into that, you actually have to get a subcontractor to come in and reprogram this whole thing so that it would output the streams that you want. It is a very complicated and expensive process. In our case, the live wedge that we just took was literally a duct tape solution. I have pictures, like we've actually duct taped the thing around the rack with the video equipment. We did this in the office where I work. I'm slowly convincing the people responsible for that infrastructure in the other offices to adopt it as well. But let's say that they're sort of uncomfortable about having the duct tape solution. Still, they'll probably come around because it provides a lot of value. It is $1,000 compared to a multiple tens of thousands infrastructure next to it, and it adds so much value. So this is really a great piece of equipment if you need that sort of thing.
It does perhaps 70% of what a NewTek production switcher or TriCaster does, while not invoking Windows and all of that, while being an appliance. So if it is a solution to the problem you have, it's a very affordable way of doing it. By the way, to take us off topic for just a moment, we're gonna have a moment of Zen here.
That's a puppy moment.
Yes, puppy time.
Julio this week.
Hey, puppy. Oh, he doesn't hear us.
He is 12 weeks old tomorrow, and he can't hear you exactly, but he can see what's going on. So, anyhow, your moment of Zen.
That's a picture, puppy. He's so beautiful.
Yeah, and this is also to swing back to this earlier thought about open source, closed source, whatever. Tools, quality tools. Quality tools are always worth the money, and that applies to open source versus closed source. I'm always looking for quality tools. Also, hardware versus software. Sometimes hardware is a more appropriate solution than software, even though you could do it both ways. And this is a case where if it really absolutely has to work all the time, and it's deterministic and really defined in what the function is, hardware. Because then you can focus on the things that software does best, things where software adds value.
Agreed.
Yeah, the thing I love about that live wedge thing is the way that you can control it with an iOS or Android application. So you control it from your iPad, which is neat.
Yeah, which is neat because that sort of stuff normally sits in a room hidden somewhere that is far from where the event is actually happening. And it has it's still a little bit rough iOS application, I would say. It has a few rough edges, but it does what you need it. You see previews of all of your feeds, of all the different cameras that you're feeding into it. You see how they behave as you mix them and transition from one to the other. And all of that from the comfort of an armchair with an iPad or an Android. So
yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what the guys who did the video production at Camaillo World were using, because they were able to have multiple camera feeds, and the guy who was wandering around at the front had his iPad and was able to dynamically switch and do things with the feed.
Well, as a matter of fact, most of the expensive systems would look the same way from the outside too. So if you're using a Crestron system, for example, you would have an iPad application as well.
Well, bearing in mind these were open source guys who don't do this for a living. But
were they just using the equipment at Fraunhofer though? No,
pretty sure they weren't.
Okay.
They brought their own gear and they knew how to drive it. Anyway, that's quick aside. Sorry, I stopped you in mid-flight.
Question from Mr. Smith. which will be followed by a question from Mr. Tott. So go ahead, Mr. Smith.
Yeah, thank you very, very much, Randy. Having been told that my questions are currently banned, I don't know quite what I've done to deserve that, but hey, all the video stuff is wonderful, Emil, but there are still aspects of audio that haven't actually been implemented, or not that I'm aware of. Anyway, I mean, does Jitsi Video Bridge now support stereo? Do we get positional audio?
If you ask your question that way, then the answer is going to be sure, Andy. You can do whatever you want with the different tracks of audio that the Video Bridge sends to you.
As so a project, are you planning to support stereo audio?
So what you're asking me is, so again, if you're using the Video Bridge with your own clients, you get the different audio tracks separately. Whether you render them on the left or to the right is entirely up to you. So the Jitsi Video Bridge does support that use case, as opposed to, contrary to a mixer. Let me phrase that a little bit better. Contrary to an audio mixer, where this has to be explicitly supported, a video audio router doesn't need explicit support for that. You can just implement it in a client. Our client doesn't do positional audio. Personally, I'm not a big fan of this feature. I think that it is not, that it can be distracting in some cases, especially if as you have people leaving and joining, and the amount of effort it takes to get this right, I think is not justified by what you get at the end, which is a little bit fancy, but from my experience at least, and I'm speaking as a user now, not as a product manager or anything, which I'm not. From my experience, this is mostly a fancy thing that doesn't improve my user experience participating in conferences. Sorry to disappoint you. You are, however, free to. This is the typical annoying open sourcey answer. Go and add that to Jitsi Meet clients, and we will add it behind the setting. And if people like it, we'll even make it the default. So.
I think that's been your standard answer to me with every question I've asked you about features.
That you're not fair. We've implemented a bunch of things because you guys have asked for them.
I do.
Well, and in here, I'll take that further. And in terms of positional audio, it wasn't interesting until recently. It's becoming more interesting. And since YouTube and there's a variety of places that have adopted the older ambisonic standards, which allows you to have, say, 4 streams comprising a B format, spherically encoded sound that you can then turn around and do VR trickery with, I think that could be very, very cool. But all that is 4 streams maintained closely in sync. So maintaining sync, and then let somebody else write some crazy complicated client. And wait for motion sickness as you go from person to person with different oral perspectives.
I think the bottom line, it's easy to see, for example, if you got YouTube does 360, okay? If you're going to be panning around and doing something that is interesting in 360, that's great. Yeah. But for the stereo sound part, I agree completely with you, Emil. Unless you have a compelling reason to do it and your production is doing it in a way that makes sense, that's great. I was listening to a podcast done by 2 women, and I happened to listen to a couple of episodes. James, I happened to listen to a couple episodes later in the stream, and then the first episode, their first episode was in stereo, and actually it was a little distracting listening. Because right, one woman's on one side, one's on the other. Okay, but frankly, the quality wasn't right. There was no concentrated effort. In other words, they were on 2 sides of a mic, and I've done that, by the way, too. But it didn't work for some reason. And later on, I noticed that they dropped that. Either it was too complicated to produce, or they realized that there was no compelling reason for it. If you have a compelling reason for any, by the way, video, there's not always a compelling reason. Here we are, a bunch of guys, sausage fest, who cares? Why do we even need the video? But we do it because it puts a human face on the various actors that are here. I mean, I think there's just enough, barely. And that's because of Mr. Bodie's appearance, which is obviously always amazing.
You were complaining nobody's asked you to take your top off yet, weren't you?
Yeah, well, that's the other thing is that we do hold
Emil to take his top off.
We do hold the record on Periscope for going at least 90 minutes with not a single person saying take your top off. So that is a big accomplishment as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, I've gone too far again. Always, Tim has he's been here. He jumped out. He came back. He looks horribly bored. And I'm going to force him by talking about him.
Talk about security. I'm pretty sure that would.
IoT security. Tim, come on.
He's not even listening. He's talking to somebody else.
Somebody else with his hand gestures. He looks like some... All right. Anyway, Dave, we got all of your questions, I guess, right? Or
go on, Dave.
Well,
you're there.
I am somewhat horribly specialized. I used to be somewhat active in the IETF RMCAT working group, which was working on congestion control for video. So that's why I asked that earlier question, and I got a bit of a hand wave from Emil. I am curious if any of the work of the RMCAT group, things like Google Congestion Control or what was called NADA by Cisco, is what you're going to do to improve how video and audio are transferred.
Yeah, we actually already implemented Google Congestion Controls, bandwidth estimation, and we are very closely following RMCAT, either when we attend the ITF or remotely. We're still not fully sold on Google's new send-side estimations, where every RTP packet is ACT, and you basically remove the REMB messages that tell you how much bandwidth you approximately have. But yes, RMCAT is definitely our main source of inspiration for these things, absolutely.
Okay, so the quick follow-up question is, are you putting audio and video on separate 5 tuples?
No.
If you can see my lips going down.
So,
anyway.
Yeah, go ahead.
Anyway, on my side of the universe, we're actively improving how Wi-Fi and so on work with algorithms like FQCODL and Cake. And we just pushed FQCODL into Wi-Fi for Linux. And I am dying to find someone with a strong video conferencing test bed and platform to go try that and see if we have won or lost in any respect. Is there a way for me to get somebody over at your 2,000 person company to be playing with these technologies?
Yeah, let's. I would love to learn more about it because I haven't heard about it so far, but I definitely love to learn more about it. I'd like to make it very clear that the 2,000 people are in no way related to our team. We're 12, as I've said a number of times, but let's talk about it, and maybe I can figure out a way that we can be helpful. Great,
thank you very much.
Thanks for bringing it up.
Okay, this is a party that could go on forever, obviously, or at least well into the night of all of our different time zones. But let me find out if anybody who hasn't had a chance to speak, like Tim, who can ping him and. Oh,
well, no, he looks like he's going to plug his headset in.
Yeah, he's going to come in a second.
But then again, if we get him to ask a question, he'll go on for about.
Yes, all right, Tim, it's your turn. It looks like he. Hello, Tim. Yeah, he's centering himself.
Hello.
There we go.
What's up?
Oh,
I've been talking to all sorts of people, and
you haven't been listening, so you can't.
But I know what Emil was going to say because I heard a lot of it last week.
All right.
No, but you didn't hear all the clever questions we asked him, though.
I want you to participate, so I figured I would open up the microphone to you.
It's not the same without a long, rambly Tim question.
You're not going to get one. I don't have a sensible question to ask.
Well, Randy, you wanted to talk a little bit about security, so Tim,
well,
why don't you?
My point was not necessarily with regard to Jitsi Video Bridge or any Jitsi thing, but just in general. But we can go there and.
So I actually do have one thing to say, which staggered me. It's not a question, but it was a statement from the Google guys, which was that 0.1% of all of the traffic that goes through Chrome is carried by the data channel, and it's rising. So. And that includes all of those YouTube videos that people watch. So like all of those gigabytes of YouTube videos. So for every gigabyte, there's a megabyte of data channel traffic. That's kind of interesting. Like,
What does that mean as far as a YouTube video, though? The data.
Yeah,
channel?
I'm just
Tim,
saying.
Tim, can you explain that again? I didn't quite get it.
Right.
First time.
So they have Chrome have bulk statistics over data transfer in Chrome. Yeah. And most of it goes over HTTP or HTTPS or quick, right? But 0.1% of it goes over the data channel, which is much, much higher than I expected. Like,
Isn't that explained?
Hmm?
Isn't that explained by the fact that somebody has implemented a CDN using data channels?
Maybe. I said, what do you
It's
think?
too
it is?
surprising
And
that
they
that
don't know.
CDN is that popular. So that's still a surprising piece of information. Because peer delivery CDNs are a concept that emerged from the early days of WebRTC, and it had a lot of trouble getting traction. On paper, it really looks great and makes a lot of promises, but when you look a little bit more closely into it, the one case where it actually makes sense is live streaming. And then I'm not sure why it wasn't even picking that much there. I suppose it was just a matter of being able to talk to the right people in the industry where mass live streaming is being performed. But so even if it's just that, producing that 0.1%, I'm still surprised pleasantly that people are actually adopting these things.
Yeah, I was staggered. I mean, the only thing I could come up with is that it's Pied Piper.
Well, but Pied Piper moved to video conferencing, so maybe they're not using the data channel anymore.
Oh, are they competing with you now?
Yeah. And they also talk to Eastern Europe a lot, so one thing we have in common.
I don't know if
Yeah,
I just noticed Michael's transcription services. Michael, I don't know if any of you or anyone else, has noticed that Google changed their translation. This is with regard to a lot of the services that are next to video and so on. And there's translation, there's transcription, and there's YouTube subtitles, right? They do automatic. I mean, it's pretty incredible, actually. Not that they're necessarily good, but they just like a week or two ago changed the system to some kind of neural network that apparently does a much better translations. And the example I saw was true. I mean, everybody's probably experienced their translations of like voicemail messages. I don't know. Everybody's on Google Voice. Dave, do you have Google Voice? Have you messed with that?
I've got it,
No?
and I use it.
James, you have, like, you're like me, you have 10 different accounts, probably, at least.
No more than that.
Andy, yeah, I know I'm behind on that. Andy probably has one or two Google Voice, right? I think I got you a Google. I helped you with that, right?
You did. I had to do it again because I'm silly enough to let it lapse, of course.
Well, unfortunately, Andy, I'm sorry to tell you that they don't give phone numbers anymore, as far as I know. Or
Really?
James, do you know?
Last time I tried it, which was what, 4 months ago, I got one. So
Okay, well,
I got a Montana one.
I have so many accounts that some of the accounts maybe lost their number, and at that point, they will not give you a new one. So you have to open a new account. But I don't know if anybody with a Gmail can go to Google Voice and do that, but it's really interesting. Anyway, their transcription, it's interesting just to follow how well they transcribe. Because, you know, everybody gets these spit calls. Hi, this is so-and-so from so-and-so, and or else it's the wrong numbers. Like somebody kept calling me to bring my cat in to be neutered. And I mean, you know, yeah, and I mean, hey, those
that's actually such a good prank. I can think of several people I'd like to do that with.
Well, those transcriptions were absolutely
Right.
beautiful, you know. But you know, you don't get the call. I mean, because obviously that's all U.S. centric.
Yeah,
These calls come in at 3 a.m.
exactly. You know, and these sales bots are getting better and better because you end up with a computer trying to sell you, I don't know, double glazing or something. I had one call me, try to convince me I wanted a mortgage, and here I am in rural England with some machine in, I don't know, in Texas trying to sell me an American mortgage.
Well, I had a woman call me from Italy, so we're in the same time zone. It was actually a real person, and wanted to sell me olive oil, speaking in French with an Italian accent. And every time I said it's not going to happen, she just kept going on. And I mean,
Okay, getting worse. So Andy and I, because we've got Hong Kong numbers on our True Phone
Right.
mobiles. We get these kind of 4 o'clock in the morning. Oh, people trying to sell us things, which is
Well, that's probably more because you order every 20 seconds from Alibaba. No.
no.
By the way, did you get the Black Friday from the?
Whilst we were talking about that, Amazon Dots, the Echo Dot things, are 20% off. I've just bought another one.
And Jay, please.
They're so good.
They are good. I have 3 of those.
All right, let's get to the point here of the happy birthday for Yana. Where is she?
Yeah, where is
Get
Yana?
her.
She is. I can call her.
Yeah.
On the what? On the phone?
No, I can just call out to her. I was thinking
in here. She doesn't have to be on camera if she doesn't want to. Just get her in here and we'll sing.
And Alexander as well. Let's have a look and see how he's getting on.
Emil, you have to find a way to put us on speaker long enough.
Yes, I will find a way to do that. I'll bring them in a second.
And we'll end the call on that, other than if there's any other new business or old business.
Yeah, there he is in the background.
Question?
Also, when it's roast chicken.
So, small announcement, which is, I don't know if Dave mentioned this, but we actually met for the first time in 20 years physically. It's kind of funny.
Who met?
I met Dave Tay.
I just walked up and realized he had cranky beats. He's a lot taller than he is on Huck.
Oh dear.
No, we have to get Dave to Kamelia World.
Yes, Dave.
He enjoys traveling. So.
I'm sorry, I couldn't make out what you said.
No, we have to
get something about get off the world.
I think I think we've already said this once, but you need to get to Berlin. It's usually in May or April.
I intend to try making it then. There's another
Where's
conference.
Emil's camera gone?
The wireless batter mesh conference is in around that time frame, so I may well be in Berlin for several months.
That would be great. That would be great because it's a real good conference. There's a lot of interesting people, a lot of interesting contacts to make. The wire
Speaking
people.
of conferences,
Food's going past me. I'm going to have to hang up on you all. See you.
Speaking of conferences, CCC is coming up, everybody. Keep an eye open for that.
And if you didn't know, you can register for a free CCC SIP VoIP account. So if you're watching the streams, you can actually call the people when they're actually on the platform. Not that I would do that ever. 2 years ago, but there was a really, really interesting.
You're referencing a movie that's 20 years old now. I know it seems like yesterday.
Yeah, there was a demo two years ago. It was about GSM hacking.
Yana!
There's Yana!
Yay! So shall we try singing the song?
Here we go. 1,
Oh yeah.
2, 3.
Happy
birthday to you. Doesn't work, does it?
Happy
Happy
birthday.
birthday.
to you. And many more.
Glad you could.
Worldwide happy birthday to you.
Got far too much buffer bloat there.
Yeah, honestly, that really wasn't recorded live on YouTube at all, Yana.
That's worldwide.
Yes, 3 continents.
In point of fact, yeah, in America, just coming off of Thanksgiving, yes, buffer bloat. That's what we have.
Yeah, and live on Periscope as well. That's
right.
The whole world's watching this. Yeah, you think we're joking, but no.
No, there it is. Probably the best. Well, we won't get into our record. We may be breaking our record for the top business, so we won't get into that. But we've been on for 90 minutes now.
Yes.
And where is Emil 2.0?
You'll have to unmute the mic, Yana. He's Emil has muted the mic.
I don't think he's muted. It's
yeah,
muted.
he has. He reached up. And,
hardware mute. Yeah.
Hardware mute.
Yeah.
There he is.
Crikey, looking enormous.
Can you unmute, please, Emil? We want to hear you.
Did you guys not hear anything we said so far?
No.
No.
You didn't even hear his reaction. Jana was saying that this was outstanding.
Yeah.
This was outstanding, guys. Thank you so much.
Oh, look! It's interesting. What's going on here? All these strange people.
Ben, yes.
He's giving kisses.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
Well, you can see the family likeness there. He's kind of like a mixture of Emil and you, Jana.
Yeah.
What I want to know is at what age he's going to start coding.
In a few months, I guess.
He's not there yet.
He'll probably be coding about the same sort of age he can actually talk, won't he?
He seems to have a talent in eating so far, so we're betting on that.
Oh, I can't think where he gets that from.
Yeah, really.
Does he have a similar breakfast at times?
We're talking about Mr. Two Steaks at dinner in Berlin, right?
Oh.
God. Well, you know what? We miss you so much, and it's always worth coming out to Texas just to have breakfast with you.
You would be so welcome.
Absolutely.
We'll stop.
And I won't even take you to the range.
The range.
Not that you would be afraid of it there. So they don't have sniper. Actually, they do have sniper rifles. So.
Yeah, but they'd be American things, so they'd be kind of like V8.
This seems like the ideal moment to go to the mature audiences only, and we're going to go
probably is.
now, huh? Don't you think?
I think so. I'm with
Ladies
you.
and gentlemen, Jana, it's wonderful to see you. I know I'm speaking.
It's wonderful to see you guys. Thank you so much. My heart melts right now.
Okay, we're going to cut off the broadcast. Thank you to Dave Todd. Dave, you're always welcome, and I'm really glad that you joined us tonight.
Thanks for letting me in today. It's
We'll
great.
see you again soon. Anyway, nobody leave. This is just the mature audiences only. It just means that we stop broadcasting, which is about 5, 4, 3,